Hi, my name is Katarina Soukup, and I'm here tonight to talk about lost rivers. Now, I'm not an engineer, I'm not an architect, I'm not a historian, I'm a filmmaker, and my foray into the world of lost rivers actually began, appropriately enough, with an image, and that was a photograph by Andrew Emond, and it should be up there. And this is the St. Pierre River in Montreal, and now you'll notice while the photo, to me anyway, is really beautiful and intriguing, it doesn't depict an environment that we normally associate with rivers. And that's because it's a photograph of a river buried into a Victorian sewer, a lost river. And at the time, Andrew's photograph blew my mind because it showed a part of my urban environment that I almost never, ever thought about. And when I did, I just thought of it as an ugly, dirty, and uninteresting place. But here it was, this beautiful architectural space. And the photograph actually sparked a huge curiosity in me to find out why this river was encased in brick and why some rivers are encased in concrete and not flowing above the ground. And what I learned, and what most people don't know, is that there are hundreds of lost and buried rivers flowing under Montreal, under Toronto, and in fact, under every industrialized city in the world. It's just that we as city dwellers tend to go about our daily lives driving down these straight grids of pavement without actually thinking about how the landscape has changed and what was there before the city existed. And so my question came to be, why did these rivers disappear from view, and how does that impact us today? Well, once upon a time, many rivers flowed. We built our houses on their banks, our roads hugged their curves, and their currents fed our mills and factories. But as these settlements grew into cities, we polluted rivers so much with human waste, with animal waste, and with industrial waste that they literally became open-air sewers. And interestingly, our solution 150 or 200 years ago wasn't to stop polluting the rivers. It was actually to bury them underground, where they have since flowed out of sight and out of mind. And then you can have another look at the St. Pierre River in a more modern sewer. But it begs the question of why should we care? Well, in the era of climate change, for many cities, buried rivers and Victorian sewers are starting to be a really big problem. July 8, 2013. Lost rivers made a really big splash, so to speak, during an intense rainstorm right here in Toronto last summer. Many homes, businesses, roads, and parks were flooded in what is considered to be Ontario's most costly natural disaster, with damage estimated at $850 million. And here's a video from that day at the Trinity Bellwoods Dog Bowl. And this little valley in the park is actually a vestige of the Garrison Creek, which now flows under the park in a sewer. And you saw maybe earlier a little geyser where the water was spouting out of a manhole cover. And I think we have to brace ourselves for this kind of extreme flooding occurring more and more often. Because like many cities around the world, Toronto has a combined sewer problem. Because here, buried rivers have been merged into sewers for wastewater. And these outdated, crumbling Victorian infrastructures simply don't have the capacity for the population of today's cities. And so this, combined with increasing events of extreme weather, means that these underground pipes are very often way too full of water. And that mucky overflow, which is a mix of lost river, rainwater, and sewage, has to go somewhere. And in cities which are paved with asphalt and concrete, there is precious little place to go. And so what's the result? The result is flooding and polluting sewage spills into surrounding bodies of water like Lake Ontario here in Toronto. But lucky for us, there's a world full of visionaries who believe some of the solutions to these pressing urban problems just might be right under our feet. In Seoul, Korea, a river long forgotten under an 8-lane highway was daylighted, or brought back to the surface, and made the centerpiece of an 8-kilometer green space right in the middle of the city. Completed in 2005, Seoul represents a paradigm shift in our way of seeing water in the city. It's true that cities must act urgently to manage the effects of climate change and extreme weather events, but we also want to create urban green spaces and biodiversity, not only to better manage water, but to really celebrate it. A similarly ambitious daylighting project was undertaken in Yonkers, New York, and we captured that in our film. It was the centerpiece of an urban revitalization strategy for a city so economically depressed it risked becoming the next Detroit. Ardently supported by Mayor Boris Johnson, the London Rivers Action Plan in the UK aims to restore 15 kilometres of lost and neglected rivers by 2015. The goal is to protect the British capital from the devastating impacts of flooding due to climate change. And Toronto actually had its own daylighting project in the 90s, before the Seoul project, before London, before Yonkers. Architects James Brown and Kim Story proposed creating a series of permeable holding ponds that would hold water in very intense rainstorms in the former Garrison Creek Valley, in places like the Dog Bowl, and that would be to alleviate overburdened sewers. The ponds would filter and clean water naturally instead of having to send it to the treatment plant. But maybe they were a bit too ahead of their time, because actually, unfortunately, the City of Toronto rejected their proposal and decided instead to do what we've done for the last 200 years, and that is build more concrete pipes underground and storage tanks, et cetera, et cetera. Ultimately, though, as a filmmaker, what was fascinating to me is our human relationship to water. Over the course of making a film, we met all kinds of people inspired by lost rivers: artists, historians, ecologists, architects, just ordinary citizens, and of course people like Andrew, urban explorers and photographers. And to me, most interestingly, despite the fact that these rivers have been buried for almost 2 centuries in most cases, there seems to be something innate in us that is still drawing us to these rivers and to water. And we found that people want to reconnect to these disappeared waterways, and it's prompting them to ask, how can we bring life to our lost rivers? And I think in so doing, we can also ask if we can imagine an innovative future city that paradoxically moves forward by digging up its past. Thanks.